The beauty of the place is inescapable. It has vast forests, waterfalls, 3,000 miles of freshwater shoreline. But even more incredible is its mosaic of cultures, the evidence of people brought together over centuries. Join me on this tour of enchanting landscapes and historic architecture, all shot on location. This is the story of Michigan. Millennia before Michigan was a state, indigenous Americans traversed the land, the first to discover its wonders. Paleo-Indians on the Keweenaw Peninsula were some of the first people on Earth to mine copper. In time, the nations of the Three Fires spread over Michigan. The Ojibwe were mobile hunters and gatherers. The Potawatomi cultivated the Three Sisters. The Ottawa excelled in trade. They revered the natural world and its spirits. Children visited sacred places seeking visions from spirit beings who joined them in life as their personal guardians. Tribes also appeased unfriendly spirits inhabiting the earth. But the 17th century brought them a new challenge: contact with an alien civilization. In 1622, Etienne Brulé paddled up to the frothing rapids on the St. Mary's River, known for its thousands of delicious whitefish. Brulé had come to the French colony of Canada and lived with the Hurons to learn their language. When the chance arose to travel with them deeper into the continent, he took it, despite already having faced his share of adventure, like being ritually tortured by Iroquois. As he canoed onto the upper lakes, Brulé became the first European to reach what is now Michigan. Portaging past the 21-foot rise in elevation at the rapids, he entered Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake in the world. Brulé's trailblazing introduced Michigan to the fur trade. While the English colonies were confined by the Appalachian, the French were at the outlet of the vast waterways of the Great Lakes, a natural highway. Across a 4,000-mile network, voyageurs and Native Americans exchanged furs for European goods like guns and spoons. The Navarre-Anderson fur trading post, built by French colonists, is the oldest known surviving wooden structure in Michigan. While most of the Frenchmen there sought wealth, a few sought souls. Father Jaques Marquette arrived in 1668 at the rapids of the St. Mary River, called in French Sault Ste. Marie. His task was to found a mission. The location was perfect, the intersection of water and land routes in the upper Great Lakes region. A French town soon rose next to his mission, the first European settlement in Michigan. The Catholic parish of the town continues, now in the fifth church since its founding in 1668. After some time, Marquette began working at a new mission farther west, but it hit a few hurdles, like the problem of nearby Lakota vowing to slaughter them all. So Marquette left with a group of converts to a more hospitable location, Mackinac Island. Today, St. Anne Parish traces its roots back 350 years to Marquette's mission. Finding the culinary offerings of the island somewhat lacking, he moved his mission to the mainland, calling it St. Ignace. Over the next century, France tightened its grip in the region. Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac took command of a fort near St. Ignace, but it was Cadillac's next move that made him famous. He pitched an intriguing vision to the French government, and in 1701 they authorized him to build a new fort on Le Détroit, meaning the Strait, between Lakes Erie and Huron. More than a military post, he planned to build Detroit into a thriving colony of farmers and families. He even proved his commitment by moving his wife out there from Quebec, despite her protests. He reasoned only a large, self-sustaining population could be a true base of power for France deep in the American interior. Two priests in Cadillac's party built a log cabin as Detroit's first church, now the second oldest continuously running parish in the United States. The settlement grew, drawing French settlers and thousands of indigenous Americans eager to trade. But Cadillac's vision was marred by his greed. By 1710, his enemies succeeded in removing him from Detroit. He lost his fortune and even got to spend some time in the Bastille. At least his name lived on in fame as Detroit's founder and as a car company. By 1755, Detroit was the leading French settlement of the Great Lakes. But in that year, a world war began, a showdown between the global empires of Britain and France. By the end, the French were defeated and abandoned their strongholds on the lakes. The fur trade now went to the British. The Native Americans, though, were not too fond of their new trading partners. Many of the tribes in the region, as friends of France, had long sided against Britain. With that in mind, the governor of British North America, Geoffrey Amherst, was counseled to carefully cultivate their friendship. Amherst, despite the thoughtful look in his oil painting, did the opposite, insultingly ending the trust-building ritual of gift-giving. Unrest grew as Native Americans spoke out against their dependence on European products and preached that the best approach was to turn back the clock. The Ottawa chief Pontiac stepped up to expel the British from the West. In May of 1763, Pontiac and his warriors approached Fort Detroit. They planned a surprise attack, coming under a guise of peace, but concealing weapons under blankets. Upon entering Detroit, however, Pontiac was surprised to find the British garrison on full alert, ready for an attack. One legend says an Indian woman in love with a British officer had tipped off the garrison, then drowned in a vat of maple syrup. Enraged, Pontiac put Detroit under siege. No English speaker was safe outside the walls. Even the fort's second in command, during a parley with Pontiac, was detained, killed, and cannibalized. Inspired by Pontiac, American Indians attacked other British posts in Michigan. Unaware of the situation in Detroit, the carefree British commander who had taken charge of Fort Michilimackinac fell for the old Trojan horse trick. Invited to watch the Ojibwe and Sauk compete in a game of lacrosse, the garrison flung open the doors, taking no notice of all the blankets held by the nearby women on that warm 4th of June. In a moment of distraction, as the ball flew into the fort, the women pulled tomahawks from their blankets, a war cry sounded, and that was the end for the British. Colonial fur trader Alexander Henry lived to write an account of his escape. He survived the day by hiding in the attic of his French next-door neighbor, Charles de Langlade, the first permanent settler of Green Bay. Detroit, however, continued to hold, and by winter, the warriors drifted back to their homes. Pontiac's war failed, but his name lived on in fame as a Michigan city and as a car company. By 1783, the Americans had won their independence, and the region south of the Great Lakes went to the United States, setting the stage for a turning point in Michigan's story. The British handed over the keys to their sparkling new Fort Mackinac, built atop the limestone bluffs of Mackinac Island. The fort was unassailably picturesque, but it did have one strategic flaw. It stood within cannon range of even higher ground further inland. The British took note of this before leaving, just in case. Its independence won, the US began to add new states to the Union. In 1805, it created Michigan Territory. That land was at the edge of complete transformation. But first, America would have to fend off one final attempt by a European power to seize Michigan. The War of 1812, again with Britain. And it wasn't a great start for the future Wolverine state. Governor William Hull took charge of 2,000 troops to hold Detroit. When a British army approached, Hull immediately surrendered. Britain then remembered the weakness of Mackinac Island and landed troops there. Hauling cannons to the summit, they forced Fort Mackinac to immediately surrender. Determined to reclaim Detroit, still the key to controlling the Great Lakes, President Madison launched a campaign into Michigan. And at the Battle of the River Raisin, near present-day Monroe, the Americans suffered another crushing defeat. After the battle, the Navarre-Anderson trading post looked on as Native Americans, fueled by British rum, slaughtered hundreds of wounded American soldiers. Reignited under the rallying cry, "Remember the River Raisin," advancing US forces recaptured Detroit. By the war's end in 1815, British ambitions over the future Great Lakes state were at an end. The war also marked the last time that whites and indigenous Americans fought a war on Michigan soil. Victorious in a second major war, the US now confidently stretched out across the Appalachian. Negotiators like Lewis Cass pressured native tribes to sign treaties legally ceding vast territories to the government in exchange for goods and money. The Indian Dormitory housed Native Americans that visited Mackinac Island to receive payments. Although after 1830, the federal government tragically targeted many of Michigan's American Indians for removal west of the Mississippi, most managed to escape this outcome and stay in Michigan. The land soon felt the weight of the first major wave of pioneers, Yankees from New England and New York. They were drawn by a synergy of water access through the Erie Canal and the sale of fertile land at only $1.25 per acre. The early work of settling was grueling, clearing trees and preparing fields for agriculture, but everyone agreed it was worth it for the chance to live life on their own terms. These Yankee pioneers built many of Michigan's first towns and brought values of education, religion, and industry. New Yorkers founded Fallsburg, still a carefully preserved historic village. Its covered bridge replaced previous bridges destroyed by ice jams. Grist mills went up to grind wheat into flour wherever there was water power. Stagecoach routes helped to transport the pioneers. The Walker Tavern gave rest to travelers along the 5-day stagecoach journey between Detroit and Chicago. Yankee congregations like Episcopalians and Presbyterians built churches in every major settlement. Mission Church on Mackinac Island is Michigan's oldest surviving church building. As settlers covered the prairies in the south, the final days of the fur trade played out in the north. Although Michigan's profitable fur-bearing animals like beavers had been hunted down to scarcity, Mackinac remained a forwarding center for furs from the west. Every summer, Mackinac Island came alive as traders and trappers converged. Canoes heavy with pelts arrived from distant wilderness outposts, while schooners carried supplies from eastern cities. Even in the early 19th century, the island was already showing its therapeutic effects. One summer morning in 1822, the 20-year-old Alexis St. Martin was shopping at Astor's American Fur Company store when he was accidentally blasted in the abdomen with a shotgun. Fort Surgeon Dr. Beaumont doubted he would survive, but after a long stay on the island, St. Martin recovered, except for one detail: the opening through his abdomen into his stomach never actually closed. Nonetheless, St. Martin lived for another 58 years, allowing him to marry and have 6 kids, and letting Dr. Beaumont study digestion firsthand through ethically questionable experiments. By 1833, Michigan territory had surpassed 60,000 people and was now ready for statehood. But its entry to the Union was stalled from a boundary dispute over the coveted city of Toledo. A law had originally placed Ohio's northern border along a line extending from the southern tip of Michigan. However, a surveying error had led Ohio's constitution to claim slightly more: 468 square miles of land, including the city now called Toledo. By 1833, the quarrel accelerated into a sort of war. Each side sent hundreds of militiamen to the contested zone. Ohioans depicted Michiganders as vicious and aggressive. It's theorized that portrayal inspired Michigan's mascot, the formidable Wolverine. To resolve the crisis, Washington simply denied Michigan its statehood until it gave up its claim on Toledo. As compensation, Michigan would get the unwanted wilderness of the Upper Peninsula, land that would have gone to Wisconsin, the biggest loser of the debacle. Michigan reluctantly accepted, officially joining in 1837 as the 26th state in the Union. Although Detroit was the first capital, after 10 years, Michigan decided to move its capital away from the border with Canada. The new, more central site was called Michigan, Michigan, until they renamed it Lansing. The foundations of modern Michigan were being laid. Amped with evangelical energy, many of Michigan's Christians were determined to sanctify society by battling the sins of their time. Thus, they supported causes like abolition, healthcare, and education. How successful were they? Their work laces the history of Michigan. All around the state, Michigan built one-room schoolhouses, the standard place of formal schooling until the 1920s. Michigan's first try at higher education dates back to 1817, 2 decades before statehood. Judge Woodward proposed the Catholepistomaiad, or School of Universal Knowledge. But the plan fell apart. Governor Cass was unable to find 13 qualified teachers or even to pronounce the name of the school. 2 decades later, the state relaunched a university at Ann Arbor. This time, it took off and grew to be one of the top schools in the Midwest. Churches too founded colleges as early as 1833. Free Will Baptists founded Hillsdale College, the second college in the nation to grant 4-year liberal arts degrees to women. Olivet College's Christian founders offered an education to all, regardless of wealth, gender, or race. And it has a very nice-looking library. A different kind of Yankee-rooted group in Michigan were the Strangite Mormons. James Jesse Strang led a group of Mormon separatists to Beaver Island in 1847. Strang's leadership tended toward the dictatorial. He ordered public floggings, stole his followers' wives, and proclaimed himself King of the Kingdom of God on Earth. Remarkably, this title was upheld in a federal court when he was brought to trial in Detroit, making Strang the only legal king to rule within the United States. His reign ended 5 years later when he was assassinated by his own subjects. Under Yankee leadership, Michigan would play a decisive part in the most transformational moment of 19th century America. In the 1850s, Michigan's evangelicals fought to make an end to both slavery and racism. Lizette Denison IV was one of the very first to benefit. Born into slavery, Forth legally won freedom in Michigan, becoming the first Black woman there to own land. She left a portion of her estate to build St. James Episcopal, a Carpenter Gothic church along the Detroit River. When the Civil War broke out, the Union cause was enthusiastically backed by the Great Lakes State. Over half of its eligible men fought for the Union, making this fight deeply personal. Hillsdale had been the first college in America whose charter banned discrimination based on race. Now its anti-slavery atmosphere led its students to enlist at a higher rate than any other Western college. The soldiers from Michigan lived up to their reputation as Wolverines. At the Battle of Gettysburg, the 24th Michigan Infantry held Seminary Ridge against overwhelming numbers, suffering 80% casualties. Their resolve enabled the Union Army to maneuver into the formation that would win the battle. Also present at Gettysburg was George Armstrong Custer of Monroe, Michigan. Before he earned infamy at the end of his life, he was known for his fierce cavalry charges. Custer commanded so much respect, other soldiers were known to desert their regiments and fight under him. Custer's cavalry was crucial in the most pivotal single moment of the war. During the climactic Confederate assault known as Pickett's Charge, Custer's men repelled a rear attack from the Southern cavalry, preventing a disastrous envelopment of the Union forces. As the war ended in Northern victory, Michigan emerged stronger than ever. Its farms and factories supplied the Union, while mechanization made up for the men who were away fighting. Wheat production doubled and dairy output soared, but this was just the beginning. In the next episode, we'll see Michigan's explosive ascent as it grows into an industrial powerhouse and a destination for immigrants in 19th century America.